The message arrived on a Tuesday morning, broadcast simultaneously to every government on Earth. The Galactic Council, that sprawling bureaucracy of 14 alien species who had discovered humanity 5 years prior, had made their decision. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Earth defense ship Valiant, reading the translated text with growing disbelief. Beside him, his executive officer, Lieutenant Claire Patterson, had gone pale. "They're demanding what?" Claire asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Complete disarmament within 6 months," Jake replied, his jaw tight. "Dismantling of all orbital defenses. Surrender of our FTL research. And oh, this is the best part. Mandatory population relocation from 15% of Earth's landmass to make room for a council colony." The council's reasoning was simple, almost insulting in its casualness. Humanity was too aggressive, too unpredictable. They had reviewed Earth's history and found it wanting. Wars, conflicts, violence, all signs of a species unfit for self-governance. For humanity's own good and for the safety of the galaxy, Earth would become a protectorate. Admiral Patricia Hayes received the news at Pacific Command, her weathered hands gripping the edge of her desk. She had fought in 3 wars, earned her stars through blood and sacrifice, and now some collection of aliens thought they could just walk in and take it all away. "Get me the president," she said quietly. "And someone find me Colonel Ryan Hughes. We need to start planning." Across the globe, the reaction was the same. Shock gave way to anger. Anger gave way to something colder, sharper. The council had miscalculated. They had looked at humanity's capacity for violence and assumed it made them weak, chaotic, easy to control. They hadn't considered what would happen if you gave humanity a common enemy. Part 2. The Countdown. Dr. Sophie Grant worked through the night in the underground laboratory beneath Colorado. Around her, a team of 50 scientists and engineers pushed the boundaries of physics, trying to accomplish in months what should have taken decades. "The council thinks we'll just roll over," said Dr. Marcus Webb, her colleague and the chief weapons designer. "They don't understand that we've been preparing for this scenario since first contact." Sophie nodded, her eyes fixed on the holographic display showing the prototype weapon. The Galactic Council had superior technology, yes, but they had grown complacent. 5,000 years of peace did that to a civilization. Humanity had no such luxury. "How long until we can field test?" she asked. 3 weeks, maybe less. Meanwhile, in orbit, Jake Morrison drilled his crew relentlessly. The Valiant was one of 40 Earth defense ships, hastily constructed in the years since first contact. They were outgunned by Council vessels 10-1, but they had something the Council didn't: captains who understood that sometimes you had to fight dirty to survive. "Ma'am, we're receiving encrypted transmissions from the surface," reported Ensign Kyle Davis from Communications. "Looks like the Admiral has new orders for us." Claire moved to his station, scanning the data. A slow smile crossed her face. "They're not going to like this." "Who?" Kyle asked. "The Council," she replied. "They thought we'd negotiate. They're about to learn we don't negotiate our freedom." The 6-month deadline ticked down. 4 months. 3 months. The Council sent increasingly stern warnings, each one ignored. They sent diplomats who were turned away at every port. They sent threats. Humanity sent nothing back but silence. And in that silence, they prepared for war. Part 3, First Blood. The Council made the first move, as everyone knew they would. They couldn't allow their authority to be challenged. Not by a species as young and primitive as humanity. A fleet of 30 vessels entered Earth's solar system, broadcasting demands for immediate compliance. Admiral Patricia Hayes watched them come from her command center, deep beneath the Pacific. On the screens around her, data streamed in from every sensor platform humanity had secretly deployed over the past 5 years. "They're holding formation," reported Commander Lisa Santos from Tactical. "Standard Council peacekeeping posture. They don't expect resistance." "Then let's educate them," Patricia said. "Give the order. Operation Defiance is go." In orbit, Jake Morrison received the signal. "All ships, this is Valiant Actual. Break orbit and engage. Show them what humanity does when backed into a corner." The Earth defense ships scattered like startled birds, their new propulsion systems pushing them to speeds the Council hadn't thought possible. The lead Council ship, the Harmonious Dawn, barely had time to raise shields before Valiant's first salvo struck home. The weapon that Sophie Grant had developed wasn't elegant. It wasn't sophisticated by Council standards. It was a shaped nuclear charge wrapped around a tungsten penetrator, accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. The Council's shields were designed to deflect energy weapons and conventional projectiles. They had never encountered anything quite like this. Harmonious Dawn's shields flickered and died. The second shot punched through the hull like paper. "Target destroyed," Claire reported, her voice steady despite the adrenaline. Moving to secondary targets. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, 23 Council ships were debris fields, their crews dead or captured. 7 had escaped, limping back toward Council space with tales of the savage humans who dared to fight back. Humanity had lost 12 ships and 4,000 souls. Jake Morrison stood on what was left of Valiant's bridge, breathing recycled air through an emergency mask, and knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy would come for them now, all of it. Part 4, The War Comes Home. They called it the Retribution Fleet, 80 warships from 7 different Council species, carrying enough firepower to glass a continent. They arrived 3 months after the first battle, confident and prepared for primitive human treachery. What they found instead was an enemy that had spent those 3 months turning their entire civilization into a weapon. Colonel Ryan Hughes commanded the ground batteries on Luna, massive railguns built into the craters of the dark side of the moon. "Targets acquired," he said calmly. "Firing solution locked." The railguns spoke with voices of thunder. Projectiles the size of transit buses crossed the distance in seconds, moving too fast for Council shields to properly track. 3 ships died before they could even return fire. But the Council had learned. They spread out, used their superior numbers, began a systematic bombardment of Earth's orbital infrastructure. Jake Morrison, now commanding the rebuilt Valiant II, led hit-and-run attacks against their flanks, never staying in one place long enough to be pinned down. On Earth's surface, people watched the skies light up with weapons fire. In shelters from Beijing to Buenos Aires, they waited and prayed. Sophie Grant worked feverishly on the next generation of weapons. Dr. Marcus Webb pushed the boundaries of human ethics, creating things that would haunt him for the rest of his life, because the alternative was extinction. The battle raged for 2 weeks. The Council fleet was reduced to 30 ships, then 20, then 15, but they were winning through attrition. Earth's defenses were failing. The shipyards at Mars were slag. Luna's batteries had gone silent. And then humanity played its final card. "Fire the array," Admiral Patricia Hayes ordered. From 5 hidden locations on Earth's surface, beams of coherent energy lanced into space. Not weapons in the traditional sense, but something Sophie Grant had adapted from the Council's own technology, reverse-engineered and improved. A network that could project a field of disrupted space-time, making FTL travel impossible within a light year of Earth. The Council ships were trapped, and humanity had enough ammunition left for one more fight. Part 5, The New Order. The war ended not with a grand battle but with a negotiation, though not the kind the Council had originally envisioned. Commander Claire Patterson, promoted after Jake Morrison lost his life in the final engagement, stood before the Council's emergency assembly. Around her, representatives of 14 species watched with expressions ranging from shock to grudging respect. "You misunderstood us," Claire said simply. "You looked at our history and saw chaos. We saw survival. You saw violence. We saw the price of freedom. You thought we would submit because you outnumbered us, outgunned us, had 1,000 advantages." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But you forgot the most important thing about humanity. We've spent 10,000 years fighting each other, learning every dirty trick, every desperate gambit, every way to win when winning should be impossible. And when you threatened to take our freedom, you gave us something we'd never really had before, a reason to stop fighting each other and focus all that experience on a single target." Admiral Patricia Hayes had survived the war, though she looked 20 years older. She stood now in the rebuilt Pacific Command, watching the transmission. Beside her, Colonel Ryan Hughes and Dr. Sophie Grant waited for the Council's response. It came from the Catherine delegate, a species that resembled a cross between a mantis and a flower. "What are your terms?" Claire smiled thinly. "Recognition of Earth as a sovereign system. Full membership in the Galactic Council with all associated rights. Complete technological exchange. No more keeping us in the dark. And one more thing, yes? Humans get to keep our ships, our weapons, and our right to defend ourselves. You want us to be part of your community? Fine, but we do it as..." Part 2, The Underground Laboratory, never slept anymore. Dr. Sophie Grant had not seen sunlight in 2 weeks. Around her, 50 of Earth's best scientists and engineers worked without rest. Coffee cups piled up on desks. People slept in chairs when they could no longer keep their eyes open. But the work continued. Sophie stood before a massive holographic display showing the prototype weapon. It looked simple, almost crude compared to Council technology. That was intentional. The Council expected elegance and sophistication. They would not understand human pragmatism until it was too late. Dr. Marcus Webb came to stand beside her. His eyes were red from lack of sleep, but his hands were steady as he manipulated the display. "The first batch is ready for testing," Marcus said. 20 warheads, each one capable of punching through Council shields. Sophie nodded slowly. "The principle is simple. Their shields deflect energy and slow down conventional projectiles. But these move too fast. By the time their shields register the threat, the warhead is already through." "Will they adapt?" Marcus asked. "Eventually," Sophie admitted. "But adaptation takes time. We just need to buy Earth enough time to level the playing field." A young engineer named Danny Carson approached them nervously. He was fresh out of graduate school, brilliant with computers. "Dr. Grant, we have a problem with the guidance system. At those speeds, even microsecond delays in correction can throw off targeting." Sophie turned to him. "Show me." They spent the next 6 hours solving the problem. This was how it went day after day. Each obstacle was met and overcome through human determination and ingenuity. The Council had 5,000 years of advanced technology. Humanity had desperation and creativity born from a history of impossible challenges. In orbit above Earth, Captain Jake Morrison pushed his crew harder than he had ever pushed anyone. The Valiant ran constant drills, navigation exercises, weapons practice, emergency procedures. They practiced until every action became muscle memory. Lieutenant Claire Patterson coordinated with the other 39 ships in the Earth Defense Fleet. They developed new tactics, drawing on every naval battle in human history. The Council fought in formations, predictable and orderly. Humans would fight like wolves, fast and vicious. "The Council has better ships," Claire said during one planning session. "Better weapons, better shields, better everything. So we cannot fight them head-on." Jake leaned over the tactical display. "Then we hit and run. We use the asteroid belt for cover. We never let them pin us down." A young pilot named Kyle Davis spoke up. "Sir, what if they go straight for Earth? What if they ignore us and just attack the planet?" Jake met his eyes. "Then we make them pay for every inch. We make it cost so much that they question whether it is worth it." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what Jake was really saying. They might lose this war. Earth might fall. But humanity would make the Council remember this fight forever. Colonel Ryan Hughes stood on the surface of the moon, looking at Earth hanging in the black sky. Around him, massive railguns were being installed into the craters. Each gun was 300 meters long, capable of accelerating a projectile to incredible speeds. His second-in-command, Major Lisa Santos, came to stand beside him. She was a tough woman from Brazil who had served in 3 conflicts on Earth. "The guns will be operational in 1 month," Lisa said. "We will have 50 emplacements total, enough to provide covering fire for the fleet." Ryan nodded. "The Council will not expect this. They think we are limited to our ships. They do not know we have turned the moon into a fortress where—" "Will it be enough?" Lisa asked quietly. Ryan was silent for a moment. "Probably not. But it will hurt them. And sometimes that is all you can ask for." Back on Earth, Admiral Patricia Hayes coordinated the global defense effort from her command center. Every nation had contributed ships, weapons, personnel. Old enemies worked together now, united by a common threat. A communication came in from the Council. Another deadline. Another warning. Patricia deleted it without reading the full message. She had no interest in their words anymore. Her assistant, Commander Dan Foster, approached with a tablet. "Admiral, the latest construction reports. The shipyards at Mars are ahead of schedule. We will have 12 more ships ready within 2 months." "Good," Patricia said. "What about the resource situation?" "Tight but manageable. The asteroid mining operations are working at maximum capacity. We have enough raw materials for now." Patricia pulled up a star chart showing the approaches to Earth's solar system. The Council would come from the galactic core, most likely. They would expect to find a frightened, disorganized resistance. Instead, they would find a coordinated defense that had been preparing since the day humans first reached space. People on Earth went about their lives as best they could. They went to work. They took care of their families. But everyone knew what was coming. In every city, shelters were being built. Emergency supplies were being stockpiled. Children practiced drills at school. The media talked about little else. Some said humanity should negotiate. Others said they should fight. But as the deadline grew closer, more and more people came to the same conclusion. There was nothing to negotiate. The Council wanted to take Earth's freedom. That was not something you could compromise on. Sophie finally emerged from the laboratory after 3 weeks underground. The sunlight hurt her eyes. Marcus walked beside her, both of them exhausted but satisfied. The first weapons are being loaded onto the ships, Marcus said. Jake Morrison's Valiant will carry the prototype in live combat conditions. Sophie looked up at the sky. Somewhere up there, past the blue atmosphere and the black of space, the Council was preparing their response to humanity's defiance. She wondered if they understood yet what they had started. Probably not. The Council had been the dominant power in the galaxy for so long that they had forgotten what it meant to face a real threat. They had forgotten that power not challenged becomes arrogant. They had forgotten that even the weakest creature will fight back when cornered. Humanity was about to remind them. The countdown continued. 2 months until the deadline. 6 weeks. 1 month. The Council sent their final warning. Comply or face consequences. They spoke of their fleet, their power, their authority. They spoke as if the outcome was already decided. Admiral Patricia Hayes read this message all the way through. Then she recorded a response. It was short, only 1 sentence. Come and take it. She sent it to every Council world, every Council ship, every Council station. Let them hear humanity's answer. Let them know that Earth would not yield. In the days that followed, the Council's response came. Not in words, but in action. Long-range sensors detected a fleet assembling at the edge of Council space. 30 ships, each one larger and more powerful than anything humanity had built. Jake Morrison received the report on the bridge of the Valiant. He looked at the numbers and felt his stomach tighten. 30 Council warships. Even with their new weapons, this would be almost impossible. Claire saw his expression and spoke quietly. We always knew the odds would be bad. Bad is one thing, Jake said. This is something else, so what do we do? Jake looked at his crew. Kyle at communications, Danny at weapons control, others at their stations, all of them ready to fight despite the odds. He thought about Sophie and Marcus, who had worked themselves to exhaustion to give Earth a chance. He thought about Ryan on the moon, Lisa preparing the guns, Patricia coordinating everything from below. He thought about every person on Earth who was counting on them. We do what humans have always done. Jake said finally. We fight smart. We fight dirty if we have to. We make them pay for every victory, and we never ever give up. The crew straightened at their stations. They had known this moment was coming. They had prepared for it. Now it was here. The Council fleet began moving toward Earth's solar system. 23 days at their top speed. 23 days for humanity to make final preparations. 23 days before the first shots would be fired in a war that would change the galaxy forever. Sophie went back underground. There was more work to do. Marcus returned to the weapons labs. Jake drilled his crew. Ryan checked his guns. Patricia coordinated the defense. And on Earth, people looked up at the stars and wondered what would happen when the Council arrived. They did not have to wonder long. Part 3, the Council fleet arrived exactly on schedule. 30 massive warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. They moved in perfect formation, broadcasting their demands on all frequencies. Admiral Patricia Hayes watched them come from her command center deep beneath the Pacific Ocean. Around her, dozens of screens showed data from every sensor. Humanity had deployed throughout the solar system. The Council ships were impressive, she had to admit. Each one was twice the size of the Valiant. Commander Dan Foster stood at her side, his face pale but determined. They are holding standard peacekeeping formation. They still do not think we will fight. Patricia allowed herself a cold smile. Then let us educate them. Send the signal. Operation Defiance is now active. The message went out instantly. In orbit around Earth, 40 human ships received the order simultaneously. They had been waiting, engines cold, pretending to be simple satellites and space stations. Now they came alive. Captain Jake Morrison felt the Valiant throb as the engines powered up to full. All hands, this is the captain. Battle stations. This is not a drill. Weapons free. Show these visitors what humanity does when pushed too far. Lieutenant Claire Patterson worked quickly at her station. All ships reporting ready, sir. We have firing solutions on the lead vessels. Jake looked at the tactical display. The Council ships were still moving in formation, still broadcasting demands, still expecting humanity to surrender. They had no idea what was coming. All ships, this is Valiant Actual, Jake said calmly. Break formation and engage. Target the lead ship first. Fire on my mark. The Earth Defense Fleet scattered like leaves in a storm. The new engines Sophie's team had developed pushed them to speeds the Council had not anticipated. Within seconds, they had closed half the distance to the enemy. The lead Council ship was called the Harmonious Dawn. It was beautiful in its way, all smooth lines and glowing panels. Its captain had probably never fired a shot in anger. That was about to change. Mark, Jake said quietly. The Valiant's main weapon fired. It was not a laser or a plasma bolt. It was something much simpler and much more destructive. A shaped nuclear charge wrapped around a tungsten penetrator, accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. Dr. Sophie Grant had designed it to do one thing: punch through Council shields before they could adapt. The projectile crossed the distance in under 2 seconds. Harmonious Dawn's shields registered the threat and began to respond. But the response was designed for energy weapons and slower projectiles. By the time the shield tried to deflect the warhead, it was already through. The tungsten penetrator hit the Council ship's hull at incredible velocity. The nuclear charge detonated a microsecond later. The combination was devastating. Harmonious Dawn's shields flickered and died. A massive hole appeared in its side. Atmosphere vented into space along with debris and bodies. Target destroyed, Claire reported, her voice steady despite what they had just done, moving to secondary targets. Around them, the other human ships were engaging. The Council fleet, shocked by the sudden violence, tried to respond. Their weapons fired, beautiful beams of coherent energy that could cut through normal armor like paper. Several human ships died in the first exchange, blooming into fireballs that lit up the darkness. But humanity had learned from 10,000 years of warfare. They did not fight fair. They did not hold formation. Each ship moved independently, using tactics that would have seemed chaotic to the orderly Council forces. On the moon, Colonel Ryan Hughes watched the battle unfold through long-range sensors. Wait for it, he told his gun crews. Let them get closer. The Council fleet, reeling from the initial assault, began to advance toward Earth. They were trying to regroup, to bring their superior numbers and firepower to bear. They were moving right into range of the lunar batteries. Major Lisa Santos counted down. Range in 10 seconds. 5, 3, 2, 1, all batteries fire. The moon shuddered as 50 massive railguns fired simultaneously. Projectiles the size of small buses launched toward the Council fleet. They had no explosives, no fancy technology. They were just solid metal moving at tremendous velocity. 3 more Council ships died before they even understood where the attack had come from. The fleet scattered, breaking formation for the first time. They had expected primitive resistance. They had found coordinated lethal efficiency. Jake Morrison pushed the Valiant through a series of maneuvers that would have killed the crew, if not for the inertial dampeners. A Council beam weapon missed them by meters. He could feel the heat through the hull. Return fire, he ordered. Another Council ship took damage. It was not destroyed, but it was hurt, leaking atmosphere and spinning out of control. Around them, the battle had become a chaotic swirl of ships and weapons fire. Kyle Davis called out from communications. Sir, the Council is broadcasting on all channels. They are demanding we cease fire immediately. Jake laughed without humor. Tell them we will cease fire when they leave our system. But the Council was not leaving. Despite their losses, despite their shock, they still had superior numbers. They began to coordinate, to use their advantage properly. Human ships started dying faster. The defense ship Guardian took a direct hit and broke apart. The Newton lasted longer, its captain making the enemy pay before his ship finally exploded. One by one, humanity's fleet was being ground down. On Earth, people watched the battle through telescopes and satellites. They saw their defenders fighting against impossible odds. Some prayed, some wept. All of them watched. Sophie Grant was back in her laboratory monitoring the weapon performance. The warheads were working better than expected, but it was not enough. The Council had too many ships. She ran calculations, desperate for some solution, some edge that could turn the tide. Marcus Webb appeared on her screen from another facility. "Sophie, we need to deploy the second weapon now." Sophie hesitated. The second weapon was untested. It was dangerous, possibly unstable. But Marcus was right. Without it, Earth was going to lose this battle. "Send the authorization codes," she said. "Activate all ground-based emitters." Back in space, Jake Morrison saw another human ship die. The Defiant, captained by his friend Rick Palmer, took 3 hits in quick succession. There was no time to mourn. There was barely time to survive. "Sir, we are receiving new orders from Earth Command," Claire said. "All ships are to break off and retreat to coordinates near Earth." "That will leave the Council fleet unopposed," Jake protested. "Those are the orders, sir." Jake did not like it, but he trusted Admiral Patricia Hayes. If she was ordering a retreat, she had a reason. All ships fall back to the designated coordinates. Maximum speed. The remaining human ships, now down to 28, broke off the engagement and raced back toward Earth. The Council fleet, battered but victorious, began to pursue. They were cautious now, wary of more surprises. But they were coming. On the moon, Ryan Hughes received his orders. "All personnel to shelters. Seal the batteries. The surface is about to become very unhealthy." Lisa Santos looked at him with confusion. "What are they doing?" "Something desperate," Ryan said. "Something that will either save us or doom us." On Earth's surface, in 5 carefully chosen locations, massive emitters powered up. They had been built in secret over the past months, based on reverse-engineered Council technology that Sophie's team had modified. No one was entirely sure what would happen when they activated. Admiral Patricia Hayes stood in her command center, her hand over the final authorization control. Around her, her staff waited in tense silence. This was the moment. This was humanity's last gambit. "Activate the array," she said calmly. The 5 emitters fired simultaneously. Beams of energy lanced into space, not weapons in the traditional sense, but something stranger. They created a field of disrupted space-time around Earth, a bubble of distorted physics that extended for over 1,000,000 kilometers. The Council fleet, pursuing the human ships, suddenly found their FTL drives offline. Their ships slowed, their advanced sensors going haywire. They were trapped, unable to escape, unable to call for reinforcements. And the human fleet, which had been retreating, suddenly turned around. Jake Morrison saw the tactical situation change in an instant. "They are trapped. All ships come about. Weapons free. Let us finish this." The battle resumed, but now the odds had shifted. The Council ships could not escape. They could not maneuver as effectively in the disrupted space. And humanity still had 28 ships and enough ammunition for one more push. The fighting was brutal. Both sides knew this was the end, one way or another. Ships died on both sides. The void filled with debris and bodies. But slowly, inevitably, the Council fleet was ground down. 6 hours after the battle began, only 5 Council ships remained operational. They were damaged, their crews exhausted and terrified. They sent desperate messages begging for mercy, offering to retreat. Admiral Patricia Hayes listened to their pleas. She thought about the ultimatum they had sent to Earth. She thought about the arrogance that had led them to threaten humanity's freedom. "Tell them to surrender unconditionally," she said, "or we will destroy them all." 3 of the ships surrendered. 2 tried to fight and died within minutes. The battle was over. Humanity had won, but at terrible cost. 23 Council ships destroyed. 7 escaped before the trap. Part 4, the Council called it the Retribution Fleet. 80 warships from 7 different Council species, the largest military force assembled in 500 years. They jumped into Earth's solar system 3 months after the first battle, ready for human treachery and primitive tricks. What they found was an enemy that had spent 3 months turning their entire world into a weapon. Admiral Patricia Hayes had not slept properly in weeks. The dark circles under her eyes showed the strain of command, but her voice remained steady as she watched the massive enemy fleet materialize on her screens. "Well," she said quietly to Commander Dan Foster, "they brought friends this time." Dan studied the formation. 80 ships. "They have learned their lesson about underestimating us." Patricia nodded. "Send the signal. All forces engage." On the dark side of the moon, Colonel Ryan Hughes had rebuilt and expanded the railgun batteries. 100 guns now pointed toward the incoming fleet, twice as many as before. He stood in the command bunker with Major Lisa Santos, watching the targeting computers lock onto the enemy. "The Council thinks we used everything we had in the first battle," Lisa said. "They are about to learn otherwise," Ryan gave the order. "All batteries fire at will. Continuous barrage." The moon shook as 100 railguns began firing in sequence. Every 3 seconds, another massive projectile launched toward the enemy fleet. The guns kept firing, kept launching death into the void. The Council fleet detected the incoming projectiles and adjusted course. Their shields came up. They were ready this time. The first wave of projectiles was deflected or absorbed. Only 2 ships took damage, but the guns kept firing, and firing, and firing. In orbit, Captain Jake Morrison commanded the rebuilt Valiant II. It was a new ship, but it carried the name and the spirit of the original. Around him, 38 other human ships waited for their moment. Lieutenant Claire Patterson monitored enemy movements. "They are spreading out, learning from last time. They won't bunch up for us." "Then we adapt too," Jake said. He opened a channel to the fleet. "All ships pattern Delta 7. We hit them from multiple angles. Make them divide their attention." The human fleet split into 5 groups, each attacking from a different vector. The Council had superior numbers and firepower, but humanity had spent 3 months studying the recordings of the first battle. They had learned every mistake, refined every tactic. The 2 fleets collided in the space between Mars and Earth. Energy beams cut through the darkness. Human warheads punched through shields. Ships died on both sides in brilliant flashes of destruction. But the Council was learning too. They coordinated better. They used their numbers to surround and overwhelm human ships. The Guardians' hope lasted only 15 minutes before being destroyed. The Liberty fought for an hour before succumbing to concentrated fire. On Earth, people huddled in shelters as debris from the battle began to rain down. Some pieces burned up in the atmosphere. Others hit the ground, creating craters and destruction. The news showed cities on fire, people fleeing, emergency services overwhelmed. Dr. Sophie Grant worked in her laboratory, watching the battle data stream in. The weapons were performing well, but it was not enough. The Council had too many ships. She ran simulation after simulation, looking for any advantage, any edge. Dr. Marcus Webb burst into her lab, his face urgent. "Sophie, we need to talk about the atmospheric weapons." Sophie looked up from her screen. They had discussed this before. The atmospheric weapons were a last resort, something so dangerous that using them could cause as much damage to Earth as to the enemy. But Marcus was right. They were out of options. "How many can we deploy?" Sophie asked. 6, maybe 7 if we push the reactors beyond safe limits." "Do it. We need every advantage we can get." In space, the battle raged on. Jake Morrison's Valiant II took a glancing hit that knocked out their port shields. Alarms screamed throughout the ship. Kyle Davis called out damage reports while Claire worked to reroute power. "We cannot take many more hits like that," Claire said through gritted teeth. Jake watched another human ship, the Endeavor, explode under concentrated Council fire. They were down to 32 ships now. The Council still had 67 operational vessels. The mathematics were brutal and clear. "All ships fall back to Earth orbit," Jake ordered. "We need cover from the lunar batteries and the atmospheric weapons." The human fleet retreated, fighting every meter of the way. The Council fleet pursued, confident now. They had the numbers. They had the firepower. Victory seemed inevitable. That was when the atmospheric weapons activated. From 6 points around Earth's atmosphere, beams of concentrated energy lanced upward. These were not the crude nuclear warheads of the first battle. These were weapons based on principles that Sophie's team had barely understood when they built them. They tore holes in the fabric of space itself, creating instabilities that could tear a ship apart. 3 Council ships that had moved too close to Earth simply came apart. One moment they were intact, the next they were debris expanding in all directions. The rest of the fleet pulled back hastily, suddenly wary of getting too close to the planet. But this gave the human fleet breathing room. Jake Morrison seized the opportunity. "All ships regroup. Target the ships on the flanks. Hit them hard and fast." The battle continued for 2 more days. It was a grinding, brutal affair. Ships fought until their ammunition was exhausted, then rammed the enemy in final acts of sacrifice. Crews worked until they collapsed from exhaustion, then forced themselves to continue. On the moon, the railguns fired until their barrels glowed red. Ryan Hughes had to shut down 20 guns to prevent catastrophic failures. But the remaining 80 kept firing, kept hurting the enemy. Colonel Ryan watched as another section of batteries overheated. Major Santos, status report. Lisa looked at her screens with tired eyes. We have maybe 6 more hours of continuous fire before we have to shut down completely. The barrels cannot take any more. Then we make those 6 hours count. The Council was grinding humanity down through sheer attrition. They were down to 42 ships, then 35, then 28. Each loss hurt, not just strategically but personally. These were friends, colleagues, people who had trained together and fought together. Admiral Patricia Hayes watched the casualty reports come in. Over 15,000 dead, orbital infrastructure destroyed, cities damaged, and still the Council fleet kept coming. Commander Dan Foster stood beside her, his face gray with fatigue. Admiral, at current rates we will have no ships left within 12 hours. We need to consider evacuation of critical personnel. Patricia shook her head. No evacuation. We fight to the last ship. If Earth falls, it will not be because we gave up. She pulled up the communications channel to Sophie's laboratory. Dr. Grant, do you have anything left? Any surprise we can use? Sophie looked at the camera with haunted eyes. She had been awake for 48 hours straight. One more thing. The array. We can expand it, push it further than before. It will burn out the emitters, but it might trap more of their fleet. How many ships could it trap? Maybe 20. Maybe more. But Admiral, if we do this, we cannot do it again. The emitters will be destroyed. Patricia did not hesitate. Do it. Trap as many as you can. The 5 emitters on Earth's surface, already damaged from continuous operation, powered up one final time. Sophie watched the power readings climb into dangerous territory. The emitters were designed to handle specific loads. This would push them far beyond their limits. Activating now, Sophie said. The field of disrupted space-time expanded outward from Earth like a bubble. It caught 23 Council ships that had been moving in for the final assault. Their FTL drives died. Their shields flickered. They were trapped, and the emitters exploded one after another. Massive detonations that could be seen from orbit. Sophie's laboratory shook violently. Emergency systems activated as fires broke out. Marcus grabbed Sophie's arm, pulling her toward the exit. We have to go. The whole facility is coming down. They ran through collapsing corridors, joining other scientists fleeing the destruction. Behind them, years of research and development burned. But it had been worth it. They had given Earth's fleet one more chance. Jake Morrison saw the enemy ships trapped in the field and did not waste the opportunity. All ships full assault on trapped targets. Everything we have left. The 21 remaining human ships, battered and low on ammunition, threw themselves at the trapped Council vessels. It was savage, desperate fighting. Ships traded fire at point-blank range. The Valiant II took hit after hit, but Jake kept firing, kept fighting. One by one, the trapped Council ships died. But so did the human ships. The Defiance, the Independence, the Constitution. Names that would be remembered, crews that would be honored. They died fighting, taking the enemy with them. When the slaughter was over, only 12 human ships remained operational, but 44 Council ships had been destroyed in the field. The remaining 23 Council vessels, shocked by the losses, finally broke off the attack. They retreated to the edge of the solar system, regrouping and reassessing. They had won, technically. They had destroyed most of Earth's fleet, but they had paid a terrible price. Over 60 ships destroyed, thousands dead. Jake Morrison sat on the damaged bridge of Valiant II, breathing. Part 5. The war did not end with a grand battle. It ended with a negotiation, though not the kind the Council had originally planned. 6 months after the second battle, a Council diplomatic vessel entered Earth's solar system. It came alone, broadcasting peaceful intentions on all frequencies. This time they asked permission before approaching Earth. Lieutenant Commander Claire Patterson, promoted after Captain Jake Morrison died in the final hours of the second battle, stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt orbital station Unity. She watched the Council ship approach with mixed feelings. They had won in a way, but the cost had been staggering. They want to talk, said Kyle Davis, now her executive officer. After everything, they finally want to talk. They want to negotiate because destroying us would cost more than they can afford, Claire replied. Let them come. But we negotiate from strength, not desperation. On Earth, Admiral Patricia Hayes prepared for the most important meeting of her life. The Council had requested a formal negotiation session. They wanted to end the conflict, to find a peaceful resolution. Patricia knew what that really meant. They wanted to save face after being humiliated by a species they had considered primitive. Dr. Sophie Grant had survived the destruction of her laboratory. She had spent the months since then helping rebuild Earth's defenses. The weapons she designed had saved humanity, but she took no joy in it. Too many people had died. Too many friends were gone. Dr. Marcus Webb worked beside her, as always. Together they ensured that humanity would be ready if the Council came back. But they also hoped quietly that peace might actually be possible. Colonel Ryan Hughes remained on the moon, commanding the rebuilt batteries. Major Lisa Santos was there with him, both of them scarred by what they had seen and done. The moon had become a fortress bristling with weapons. It would never be vulnerable again. The Council sent their delegation to a neutral location, a space station humanity had built at the halfway point between Earth and Mars. It was new, constructed from the debris of both human and Council ships. A reminder of what war cost, Claire Patterson led the human delegation. She had earned that right through blood and sacrifice. Beside her were Admiral Patricia Hayes, Sophie Grant, and Ambassador Helen Carter, one of Earth's most experienced diplomats. The Council delegation was led by a being called Prime Coordinator Velshan, from the Catherine species. The Catherine looked like a cross between a praying mantis and a flowering plant. Velshan's translator rendered its voice as calm and measured. "We come to discuss terms," Velshan said without preamble. Claire met its compound eyes steadily. "You mean you come to discuss surrender terms?" Velshan's petals twitched in what might have been irritation. "You misunderstand. The Council offers a compromise, a way for both sides to claim victory." "We do not need to claim victory," Admiral Patricia Hayes said coldly. "You attacked our system twice. Both times you retreated after suffering unacceptable losses. That is victory enough for us." Velshan was silent for a moment. When it spoke again, its tone had changed slightly. More respectful, perhaps, or simply more cautious. "You fought well. Better than we anticipated. The Council acknowledges this. But continuing this conflict serves no one. Your losses have been severe, your infrastructure damaged, your population traumatized. We offer a path to peace." Sophie Grant leaned forward. "What kind of peace?" "The kind where you still tell us what to do? Where Earth becomes your protectorate in all but name?" "No," Velshan said, and something in its voice suggested honesty. "We have learned that humanity cannot be governed by others. You would fight until nothing remained." "Such determination is unusual in the galaxy." Ambassador Helen Carter, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke. "Then what exactly are you proposing?" Velshan manipulated a holographic display. It showed a document written in both human languages and Council script. Full recognition of Earth as a sovereign system. Complete technological exchange. Membership in the Galactic Council with all associated rights and privileges. Claire read through the document carefully. It looked good, too good. "What is the catch?" "No catch," Velshan said. "Merely requirements. Humanity must agree to Council laws regarding warfare, trade, and exploration. You must participate in Council peacekeeping efforts, and you must allow Council observers on Earth to ensure compliance." Admiral Patricia Hayes shook her head. "No observers. We will not be monitored like children." "Then how can the Council trust you?" Velshan asked. "The same way we trust you," Patricia replied. "Through mutual interest in avoiding more bloodshed." The negotiations continued for 3 days. Both sides argued over every detail, every clause, every implication. The Council wanted assurances that humanity would not become a threat. Humanity wanted guarantees of independence and equality. On the 3rd day, Claire Patterson finally laid out humanity's final terms. She stood before the Council delegation and spoke with the authority of someone who had fought and survived. "Here is what we require. Complete recognition of Earth's sovereignty. No restrictions on our military. No observers. No interference in our internal affairs. Full membership in the Council with equal voting rights. And complete technological exchange, not partial, not gradual. Everything you know we want access to." Velshan's petals fluttered rapidly. "That is unacceptable. You ask for more than some species who have been Council members for centuries." "We earned it," Claire said flatly. "We fought 2 battles against overwhelming odds. We bloodied the Council badly. We proved that we can defend ourselves. We proved that conquering us would cost more than you are willing to pay. That earns us respect. That earns us equality. And if we refuse? Velshan asked. Claire smiled without warmth. Then we continue as we are. Earth remains independent, isolated, and armed. We continue developing our own technology. We continue building our military. And maybe in a few decades we start expanding beyond our system, without council oversight or approval. The threat was clear. An isolated, paranoid humanity, armed with weapons the council had learned to fear, expanding into the galaxy. The council had two choices: accept humanity as an equal partner, or create a rival that would challenge them for centuries to come. Velshan consulted with the other council delegates in their own language. The humans waited patiently. They had time. Earth was rebuilding, growing stronger every day. The longer the council delayed, the better humanity's position became. Finally, Velshan turned back to the humans. The council accepts your terms. With one addition: humans must agree to serve in council military operations when requested. Your skills in warfare would be valuable for dealing with threats. Admiral Patricia Hayes considered this. It was not unreasonable. And it gave humanity a legitimate reason to maintain a strong military. Agreed. But Earth retains the right to refuse requests that conflict with our interests. Acceptable, Velshan said. The treaty was signed that evening. It was not a perfect document. Both sides made compromises, but it was fair, or as fair as anything could be after such a brutal conflict. Claire Patterson returned to Earth as a hero. She did not feel like one. She felt tired and sad, thinking of Jake Morrison and all the others who had died. But she had fulfilled their mission. Earth was free. Humanity had a place in the galaxy. Sophie Grant and Marcus Webb received commendations for their work. They accepted them quietly, then returned to their laboratories. There was still work to do. The technology exchange with the Council would keep them busy for years. Colonel Ryan Hughes and Major Lisa Santos remained on the moon, training the next generation of defenders. They would make sure Earth never forgot the price of freedom. They would make sure humanity was always ready to defend what they had won. Admiral Patricia Hayes retired 6 months after the treaty was signed. She had served for 40 years, fought in 4 wars, and saved Earth from conquest. She spent her remaining years writing about the war, ensuring future generations understood what had happened and why. 5 years after the treaty, human ships patrolled Council space as part of joint peacekeeping operations. The same aggression that had worried the Council now served a greater purpose. Where other species hesitated, humans acted. Where others saw problems too complex to solve, humans saw challenges to overcome. Claire Patterson commanded the defense ship Vigilance, patrolling the borders of Council space. Her crew was half human, half Council species. They worked well together, though the aliens sometimes seemed puzzled by human behavior. "Why do humans always volunteer for the dangerous missions?" asked her Catherine tactical officer one day. Claire thought about Jake Morrison, Sophie Grant's exhausted face, Ryan Hughes standing firm on the moon, Patricia Hayes making impossible decisions. She thought about everyone who had fought and sacrificed. "Because we know what freedom costs," she said finally. "We know what it means to fight for something you believe in. And we never want to forget." The galaxy had changed in those 5 years. Other species looked at humanity with a mixture of respect and caution. The Council had learned that technology alone did not determine power. Determination, creativity, and willingness to sacrifice also mattered. Earth had proven something important. They had shown that even the weakest species could fight back. They had shown that freedom was worth any price. They had shown that underestimating